Before we dive into this story that taught me one of the most important lessons of my career, if you enjoy content like this, subscribing to the channel really helps out more than you know, and I truly appreciate every single one of you who takes that extra second to support what we're building here together. Alright, let's get into a story about good intentions, unexpected outcomes, and what I learned about the true meaning of helping others grow. Be me, 44. Name is Elise, and I'm working as Vice President of Business Development at Vanguard Strategies, a marketing and consulting firm where I've spent the last 22 years building my career from the ground up alongside colleagues who became more like family than coworkers. This story isn't about pointing fingers or blaming anyone because honestly, everyone involved had good intentions and genuinely wanted to make a positive difference in the lives of women at our company who were just starting their professional journeys. What I learned through this experience changed the way I think about mentorship, personal growth, and what it really means to help someone succeed in ways that no business book or leadership seminar ever could have taught me. Let me take you back to where this all started because understanding the context is important for understanding why things unfolded the way they did and what lessons we can all take away from it. 22 years ago, I walked into Vanguard as a 22-year-old entry-level account coordinator with nothing but a degree, a lot of ambition, and absolutely no idea how much I still had to learn about the professional world. I made copies, scheduled meetings, took notes, answered phones, and did whatever was asked of me because I understood even then that the path to where I wanted to go required me to start exactly where I was and work my way forward one step at a time. The early years of my career were shaped by something invaluable that I didn't fully appreciate at the time, and that was the presence of mentors who saw potential in me and invested their time and energy into helping me develop it. Margaret was a vice president back then, a woman in her 50s who had fought her way to the top during an era when there were even fewer women in leadership positions, and she took me under her wing in a way that changed the entire trajectory of my professional life. She wasn't always gentle with her feedback, and she pushed me into situations that terrified me. But looking back, I understand that every uncomfortable moment she created was actually an opportunity for growth that I couldn't have accessed any other way. Margaret taught me how to negotiate contracts without apologizing for asking for what I deserved, how to present to executives without letting my nerves show, and how to handle rejection without letting it crush my confidence or slow my momentum. The lessons weren't always comfortable, and there were days when I went home feeling overwhelmed and wondering if I was really cut out for this career path that I had chosen for myself. But I kept showing up because something inside me understood that the discomfort I was feeling wasn't a sign that something was wrong. It was actually a sign that I was growing and expanding beyond the limitations of who I used to be. By the time I was 35, I had worked my way up to director level, and by 40, I had achieved the vice president title that once seemed like an impossible dream for someone who started out making copies and scheduling meetings. I became one of 5 women at the executive level in a company of 250 people, not because anyone gave me special treatment, but because I put in the work and seized the opportunities that came my way even when they scared me. Every step of that journey was built on the foundation that Margaret and other mentors had helped me create, and I never forgot that I didn't get where I was entirely on my own efforts. 3 years ago, our company launched an initiative that filled me with excitement and hope because it represented everything I believed in about women supporting other women in the professional world. The program was called Women Rising, and it was designed to create formal mentorship connections between senior women like myself and junior women who were just beginning their career journeys at Vanguard. Celine from Human Resources had designed the program beautifully with structured meetings, goal-setting frameworks, stretch assignments, and all the elements that I wished had existed in a formal way when I was starting out. I volunteered to be a mentor immediately because I saw this as my opportunity to give back what Margaret and others had given to me all those years ago when I was just starting out. The thought of helping young women navigate the challenges I had faced and avoid some of the mistakes I had made along the way filled me with a sense of purpose that went beyond my regular job responsibilities. I genuinely believed that this program could change lives the same way that informal mentorship had changed mine, and I couldn't wait to get started with my first mentee. They assigned me to work with a young woman named Jordyn who was 27 years old, had been with the company for 2 years, and showed a lot of promise in her role as an account manager. Our first meeting went wonderfully, and I left feeling energized and optimistic about the potential of our mentorship relationship and what we could accomplish together over the coming months and years. She asked thoughtful questions about my career path, took detailed notes, and told me that her goal was to reach director level within 5 years, which I assured her was absolutely achievable with the right approach and consistent effort. I laid out what it would take to reach her goals, including stretch assignments that would build new skills, visibility projects that would get her noticed by leadership, and the development areas she would need to focus on along the way. She nodded along enthusiastically and seemed genuinely motivated to do whatever it took to achieve the career advancement she said she wanted for herself. I left that first meeting feeling like this was going to be exactly the kind of meaningful mentorship experience I had been hoping for when I volunteered for the program. The second meeting was scheduled for 2 weeks later, but a few days before we were supposed to meet, I received a message from Jordyn saying she needed to reschedule due to a conflict that had come up unexpectedly. I understood completely because life happens and schedules change, so I didn't think anything of it, and we found another time that worked for both of us the following week. These things happen in busy professional environments, and I certainly wasn't going to hold one rescheduled meeting against someone who had seemed so engaged and motivated in our first conversation together. The pattern that emerged over the following months, however, was something I hadn't anticipated and honestly didn't know how to address in a way that felt supportive rather than critical. Meeting after meeting was rescheduled or canceled, often with explanations related to needing personal time, feeling overwhelmed, or prioritizing wellness and self-care during a particularly stressful period. I found myself in a difficult position because I genuinely cared about Jordyn's well-being and didn't want to pressure her during times when she was struggling, but I also knew that the mentorship couldn't be effective if we rarely actually met. Over 4 months, we had scheduled 10 sessions together but only managed to actually meet twice, and even those meetings felt rushed and surface level because there wasn't enough consistent contact to build real momentum. When I suggested challenging opportunities that would help her develop new skills and gain visibility with leadership, she hesitated and said she wasn't sure she was ready for that level of responsibility yet. I tried to explain that readiness often comes through doing rather than waiting, that I had never felt completely ready for any of the opportunities that ended up defining my career, but the message didn't seem to land. One of the things that struck me during this experience was how different Jordyn's approach was from what I remembered about my own early career, and I found myself wondering if I was simply out of touch with how younger professionals viewed work and growth. She spoke often about protecting her energy, maintaining boundaries, and prioritizing her mental health, which are all things that I believe in and think are genuinely important for sustainable long-term success. But somewhere in those conversations, I sensed a disconnect between the goals she said she wanted to achieve and the actions she was willing to take to achieve them, and I didn't know how to bridge that gap. I started comparing notes with Valerie, another senior woman who had volunteered as a mentor in the Women Rising program, and discovered that she was experiencing remarkably similar challenges with her own ments. She had been assigned 3 different ments over the course of the program and struggled with engagement and follow-through with all of them, which made me realize that this wasn't just about my particular situation with Jordyn. We sat together trying to understand what was happening and whether there was something we were doing wrong or something about the program structure that wasn't working the way it was intended to work. The more we talked to other mentors in the program, the more we realized that this was a widespread pattern rather than isolated incidents, and that raised questions none of us had easy answers for. Many of the ments seemed to want the benefits of mentorship, the guidance, the connections, the career advancement, but struggled with the consistent effort and occasional discomfort that mentorship required. And when faced with challenging opportunities that would push them outside their comfort zones, the response was often to step back rather than step forward, citing concerns about wellness, balance, or feeling overwhelmed. What made this particularly complex for me was that I genuinely believe in the importance of self-care, mental health, and sustainable approaches to work that don't burn people out or damage their well-being. The question I kept wrestling with was where the line existed between healthy self-care that sustains long-term performance and avoidance of necessary discomfort that prevents growth from happening. I never did find a clear answer to that question, and I suspect it's something that each person has to work out for themselves based on their own circumstances and goals. Not every mentorship match struggled, and I want to be clear about that because the story of what didn't work would be incomplete without acknowledging what did work and what it taught me. A year into the program, I was matched with Brynn, a 26-year-old coordinator who approached mentorship in a completely different way than what I had experienced with my previous ments. From our very first meeting, she showed up prepared with notes from her own reflection, questions she had thought about in advance, and a genuine hunger to learn and grow that reminded me of my own early career. When I suggested stretch assignments that would push her outside her comfort zone, Brynn said yes, even when she admitted the opportunities scared her, because she understood that growth and comfort rarely coexist. She showed up to every scheduled meeting, followed through on the action items we discussed, sought out feedback even when it was uncomfortable to hear, and treated my time like the valuable resource it was. Within 18 months of our mentorship beginning, she had been promoted to account manager, and she was clearly on track for continued advancement because she was doing the work required to make it happen. The contrast between Brynn and my other ments wasn't about intelligence or potential because all of the young women I worked with were smart, capable, and had genuine talent that could take them far. The difference was an approach, in the willingness to show up consistently even when it wasn't convenient, to embrace challenges even when they felt uncomfortable, and to treat mentorship as a priority rather than an afterthought. That realization helped me understand that the issue wasn't about whether people could succeed with the right support. It was about whether they were ready to do what success actually required. By the second year of the program, the data started telling a story that none of us wanted to hear but couldn't ignore because the numbers were simply too clear to explain away. Mentor participation had dropped by 40% as senior women withdrew from the program, citing frustration with inconsistent engagement and feeling like their time and energy weren't being valued or utilized. More than 60% of scheduled mentorship sessions were being canceled or resulting in no-shows, and the reasons given were overwhelmingly related to wellness, self-care, and feeling too overwhelmed to participate. Celine presented these findings to our CEO, Rhonda, who had personally championed the Women Rising initiative because she believed deeply in the power of women supporting other women in professional settings. The conversation in that room was difficult because nobody wanted to admit that a program designed with such good intentions was struggling so significantly to achieve its goals. But the numbers were undeniable, and pretending everything was fine would only allow the problems to continue without any meaningful attempt to understand or address them. What struck me most during those discussions was that everyone involved had genuinely wanted this program to succeed, from the leadership who created it to the mentors who volunteered to the ments who enrolled. There was no villain in this story, no one who was trying to sabotage the initiative or make it fail, just people with different perspectives on work, growth, and what constitutes healthy professional development. The challenge was figuring out how to bridge those different perspectives in a way that honored everyone's needs while still creating meaningful opportunities for advancement and growth. I spent a lot of time reflecting on what I had learned from this experience and what it meant for how I thought about mentorship, career development, and the role that discomfort plays in personal and professional growth. The conclusion I came to was that there's a difference between self-care that sustains your ability to perform at a high level over time and self-care that becomes a reason to avoid the very challenges that would help you grow. Both rest and effort are necessary components of a successful career, and the wisdom lies in knowing when each one is appropriate rather than defaulting to one or the other in every situation. The program was eventually scaled back, not eliminated entirely, but reduced in scope and ambition, which felt like an acknowledgement that something hadn't worked the way we all hoped it would. I stepped back from formal mentoring for a while to process everything I had experienced and to think about how I wanted to approach helping others in the future. But I never stopped believing in the power of mentorship itself, only in the understanding that mentorship requires two active participants who are both willing to invest in the process. A couple of years later, I ran into Jordyn, my first mentee, in the elevator, and we had a brief conversation that stayed with me for a long time afterward. She mentioned that she was still in the same role she had been in when we first started working together and expressed frustration about feeling like she wasn't advancing the way she had hoped to. I listened with empathy because I genuinely cared about her success, but I also found myself wishing I could somehow communicate that the opportunities she had declined might have been the path to the advancement she was now seeking. In contrast, Brynn had continued to thrive and was now a director, the youngest in her division, and a rising star in the organization because she had consistently chosen growth even when it was uncomfortable. The difference between their trajectories wasn't about talent or intelligence or even opportunity, because both of them had access to the same mentorship, the same guidance, the same chances to take on challenging assignments. The difference was in the daily choices they made about whether to lean into discomfort or to step away from it, and those small choices had compounded over time into vastly different outcomes. My daughter is starting her career now, and she asked me recently about mentorship and whether it was something she should pursue as she begins her professional journey. I told her absolutely yes, that finding someone who can guide you and share their experience is one of the most valuable investments you can make in your own development and future success. But I also told her that mentorship only works if you show up fully, do the work even when it's hard, and treat your mentor's time and wisdom as the precious gift that it truly is. The lesson I took from this entire experience is that growth and comfort are often in tension with each other, and choosing comfort every time will keep you exactly where you are. Self-care is essential, and I would never tell anyone to sacrifice their health or well-being for career advancement, but there's a difference between sustainable effort and no effort at all. The most successful people I've known throughout my career understood that taking care of themselves meant building the resilience to handle challenges, not avoiding challenges altogether. If there's one thing I hope anyone watching this takes away from my story, it's that the opportunities you decline shape your future just as much as the opportunities you accept. Every time you say no to something that scares you, you're also saying no to the growth that would have come from facing that fear and discovering what you're actually capable of. And every time you say yes, even when you don't feel ready, you give yourself the chance to become someone who is ready for even bigger opportunities down the road. I still believe in women supporting women, and I still believe in the power of mentorship to change lives, because it changed mine in ways I can never fully repay. What I've learned is that support can only take you so far, and at some point you have to be willing to do the difficult work of becoming the person you want to be. That work is uncomfortable and scary, and there are no shortcuts, but it's also the most rewarding journey you can take because it leads you to a version of yourself you never knew was possible. This story isn't about criticizing anyone because everyone involved was doing their best with the understanding they had at the time and the circumstances they were navigating. It's about sharing what I learned so that maybe someone watching can make different choices if they find themselves in a similar situation, whether as a mentor or as someone being mentored. The path forward is always built one choice at a time, and I hope this story helps someone choose growth even when comfort seems like the easier option. Thank you for watching and for being part of this community that values learning from real experiences and honest reflection about the complexities of professional life. If this story resonated with you or taught you something valuable, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and I hope you'll stick around for more stories like this one. Take care of yourselves in ways that sustain your growth rather than limit it, and I'll see you in the next one.